Hey everyone, welcome to the channel or welcome back. My name is Katie if you're new, and I'm going to be doing another update for my Pan That palette. We're very late. I am super off track. Normally I do these every second month. This is more like every third month, but I'm hoping that I will be able to sort of get it back on track. It's been the last few months have been a lot. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know. So anyway, I have actually hit 2 new pans on this palette, and I made some pretty decent progress on some of the other shadows, or at least decent as far as a palette that looks like this that I definitely do not use every day. So ideally when I film these updates I try to actually do a little bit more of a green eyeshadow look, but I wanted to sleep in a lot more than I wanted to go to physics this morning, so this was sort of like my 5-minute face, and Natasha Denona never fails me. So mini retro it is. I do have one of the mattes. I do have the olive matte in this as my lower lash line and in my crease, but anyway, apologies. Next time I will have it a little bit more together. I have been working on the Huda Beauty Emerald Obsession since the beginning of the year. Working on is maybe giving myself a little bit too much credit, but I have been trying to hit as many pans on this as I can and make as much progress on this palette as I can, with the caveat that this is definitely not an everyday kind of color story, and it's not something that I reach for as often as I do more neutral eyeshadow palettes, shall we say. So when I started off this project in January, I had no pans in this palette. You could definitely tell that it had been used a little bit, but nothing too crazy. By the first update in March, I had 2 very tiny pans. By May, I had a total of 4 pans. I had 5 pans by the last update, and I am now at 7 pans out of 9, so I have 2 more to go. I don't think that I'm going to be able to finish completely any of these shadows, but I do have some that I think I'm definitely going to be able to make some more progress on than others. Let's get into it. I did start tracking usage on these, I want to say as of the last update. I don't have a complete picture, but I have a picture for like the last 5 months or so. So I'll have a photo on screen of where I was with this palette last month, and now we are looking like this. Please ignore my incredibly chipped pointer finger. It was either remove this polish and look like I murdered a Smurf in cold blood, or one slightly chipped nail. So this is how we are looking now. So I did finally manage to hit pan in this glitter topper right up here, and then I finally also managed to hit pan on this emerald matte shade here. So I am pretty happy about that, and then I feel like you can see some reasonable progress on some of the other shades. So let's start off with the glitter topper. So I used this 14 times since the last update for 21 uses total. I've been really trying to incorporate this one somehow every single time I use this palette, but I also had a shade in my last round of my Pan Those eyeshadows that worked really nicely with the glitter topper, so when I use that I would really often pop a little bit of this on top, and I did hit a very tiny pan, not a huge one, but I was kind of wondering if I was going to get there, so I was pretty happy to see it. So next up I have this matte mint shade, which is looking definitely a lot more used. I think this is one of my favorite shades in the palette, which is interesting because this shade on its own is really not super flattering on me. It makes me look kind of dead, but I really do like it in combination with a bunch of other shades. So I think this has the most progress and probably the biggest change from the last month to, or the last update to this update. So I have used this one 7 additional times for 12 uses total since I started tracking. And I think with this one, I feel like maybe at some point I could entirely finish this shadow. Probably not by the end of this year, but at some point I feel like that could potentially happen. So the pan on this is sort of like starting to dip to one side. So I think my goal for the next update is going to be just to hit side pan on this. I think it can definitely be done. And then once we get there, I might consider having to repress this one if it starts to really crumble. And this is a pretty dry, sort of powdery matte formula, so I feel like repressing this one might be in the cards. Yeah, I'm really happy with the progress on this. This has been a really great transition shade with this palette, but also with the green that I currently have in my Pan Those eyeshadow, so I've been using it with both of these. So next up I have this shimmery mint shade, and so I have used this 3 times since the last update for 5 uses total since I started tracking, and I feel like there's a little bit of movement on this. I haven't really been as inspired to reach for this palette in sort of like the end of summer. I've been wearing a lot of like very warm tones and oranges, but I think as we get into fall and things start to cool down, I think I'll be reaching for this one a little bit more. This is the kind of shade that it's a very like approachable, very wearable green, so I feel like it's something that I could and would wear to class and not feel weird about. So I feel like maybe not this week, but maybe next week I will probably start wearing this like more often to class and put this in my regular rotation. And I'm hoping that we will have a little bit more progress on this one by the next update too. I think this is definitely my most used shimmer in this palette, so I'm hoping to sort of expand towards side pan in this one as well. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to see side pan by the next update, but I think it's very doable by the end of the year. Next up, so we have this like very dark forest green shimmer. This is honestly not my favorite formula. It's getting very crumbly and it really doesn't pull very green. It pulls a lot more black. I mainly use this along the lower lash line or for a little bit of depth in the outer third. So I've used this 4 times since the last update for 6 uses total. And honestly, when I'm using this, I'm usually using this with a small brush, but I feel like you can see that instead of it just being like this really narrow, thin sort of line, because I was using it as a liner for so long, I feel like this sort of area has started to flatten out a little bit more, so I'm pretty happy about that. And I don't push myself to use this one a whole lot, but I do want to use it a little bit more because it is really pretty. It's just a little bit hard to work with, and I find that there's something about this formula that while I really don't mind it, my eyelids sort of tend to eat it, so this one tends to fade pretty quickly on me, even with a primer. So yeah, I haven't been reaching for it a ton, but I would like to sort of step that up over the next between now and the next update. So I was actually surprised with how much difference I'm seeing in this sort of emerald shimmer right here. And I've only used this one 3 times since the last update, but I do have 7 uses total on it, and I feel like the pan has definitely expanded pretty significantly, or at least significantly in the context of how often I use this palette. So I definitely am not mad about how this is going. I pretty much reach for this a couple times a month, and I'm totally fine with that. So next up I have, honestly, this pan took me like way too long, and this is what I sort of refer to as this emerald matte shade. I have used this 5 times and I do have pan on it. Now, what I noticed with the mint shade is once I hit pan, things expanded fairly quickly, but I generally tend to go in with this one with a like precision crease brush and use it to add a little bit more depth. It took me so long to hit pan on this, despite the fact that it is not a very pigmented shade. I find that I really have to go in and build it up to get it to sort of pay off the way it looks on the pan. In the pan, I am hoping to have definitely just like a pan expansion by the next update, and I don't know if I will necessarily wear it enough to get to side pan by the end of the year, but yeah, I just do want to like expand that pan and make this one look a little bit more used. So next up I have my olive matte shade, and I used this 4 times since the last update for 7 uses total, and this I feel like you're beginning to see a little bit more of a dip. It's tiny, but it is there. I think that these two right here are definitely going to be shades that I'm going to want to use more in the fall. I think we've established that I really do, in my real life, really enjoy grungy neutrals, and these work really well with my Pan Those eyeshadows, work really nicely to add a little bit of extra depth to the Gemini palette, so I definitely see a lot more usage on this. And part of the reason I held off on focusing on these was until the fall, because I knew I would be less inclined to reach for these in the spring and more inclined to reach for them in the fall. So I do definitely want to have pan on this one by the next update. I think it's very doable, but I am definitely going to have to work at it a little bit. Okay, next up I have this olive shimmer, and I am now at 5 uses since the last update for 10 total. And again, this, I think there is definitely a little bit more of a defined dip than there was in the last update, and again, I think this is one that I reach for a lot in conjunction with the Gemini palette. So I think having that in my Pan Those eyeshadows, and just the fact that this is in the fall, the Gemini palette I reach for like all the time, so I think that I definitely will be able to hit pan on this one by the next update. These shimmers, I find once you get into them, they're not too bad to hit pan on. I think that I will probably see pan on the shimmer before I see pan on the olive matte, but we'll see how that goes. And then I actually have used this gold once. I haven't been really forcing myself to use this one because it is really pretty, but it looks so bad on me. So I kind of, after I panned it, I was just like, I have not found a way to use this where I just don't look weird. So I sort of like pulled back on this one and focused on the other shades that I do like using, but I have used this once. I used it as an inner corner highlight once, so obviously no change, but I have used it. As you guys can see, I only have 2 pans remaining that I want to hit before the end of the year, so I'm now at a pan percentage of 77.78%, up from like I think 55% as of the last update, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. So I have hit pan on 1 of my 3 focus shades from the last update, so I am basically just going to continue using these 2 olive shades as my focus shades, and then I think I'm also just going to be focusing on these 2 up here as well, because I think that those are the most realistic for like daily usage, and I think the rest of them I'm just going to sort of keep on chipping away at them as I can and as I feel like it. Alright, so that is how my palette is looking, all of my progress, goals, and focus shades for the next month. I don't actually have any looks that I remember to photograph to share with you guys, but realistically I think you've seen a lot of the same things that I do over and over. This palette is pretty monochromatic, so I find that you tend to get very similar looks. I'll try to remember to photograph some for the next update, but yeah, I think you've seen most of what I do. So I wanted to talk really quickly about update schedule going forward for the rest of the year, because this update should have probably gone up like 3 weeks ago, and I've gotten pretty behind for a bunch of different reasons. I was kind of like thinking that maybe I would switch to monthly updates, but I want to hear from you guys. So realistically, most of the progress on this palette has come in the last month. This is when I've really been making more of an effort to reach for this. I wanted to talk about update schedule because I've been kind of trying to decide what to do with this, especially now that I've hit pan on most of the shades. So I thought that I would ask you guys what you would be interested in seeing, because obviously as a content creator, I want to make content that is interesting and watchable, and I don't want this to be boring. So option number 1 is for me to switch to monthly updates. Realistically, most of my progress on this palette has been in the last month, so I was kind of surprised by how much pan expansion I saw with only a couple of uses, especially on some of the shimmers. So I don't know if it's time to move to monthly, but if I did that, I would probably do them at the end of the month, and then my finale would be at the end of December, and then I would give myself a few weeks and then come back with an intro and a different palette for this project next year. And then the other option would be to sort of do like a 6-weekly, like every other month kind of situation. So if I did that, my next update would probably be early November, and then my finale would be at the end of December. Feel free to let me know what you guys think, if you would be interested in me going monthly or not, and I will definitely take that into consideration when I sort of decide what to do. So that pretty much wraps up this video. So if you haven't already subscribed and you want to see more of my face, I upload new beauty videos roughly once a week. And if you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!